Now I would like to entertain questions from the audience. Maybe let's try 3 questions, and then we have a break, and then we go to the last part, the panel discussion with our guest. So who would like to ask a question? Ali, please, may I ask you to state your name, your organization, and as much as possible, post your question right away in a very clear way, so we have time for discussion for our speakers to respond. Who would like to ask a question first? One. Okay, Sandra.
I'm Sandra Mehens, vice forsitter from the platform for Latin American organizations, and also I have a network for Ecuadorian people here in the Netherlands. My question goes to the Mr. Vasconcelos. It's the first time that I hear about the organization that you have been talking about, and surprised me that you just give a case about Peru, where there is a lot of Latin American people, especially out of Ecuador, in Europe. And my question is, what is your plans in the future to let know the other countries and the people about the benefits of this department? Thank you.
Yes, very briefly, through call for proposals, and information about the call for proposals is basically mailed out throughout the world, wherever we have, through organizations like this or events like this, where we gather database and then we send information. So basically, we post that on the internet. So again, this project for the Peruvian community, as many others, is a project that was selected through this call for proposals. The idea of this project, as I mentioned before, is to, once they're under implementation, once they've been implemented, is to gather all the lessons learned and try to actually disseminate information as much as possible through many means, which goes through contacting directly known or institute or associations that we know to send that information, but not just for that community, but all the hometown associations, governments as well. So the project is not just here to help specifically the institution or the community of focus of that project, but it's to take all the lessons learned, to really extract all the juice you can from it, and see that if this could be replicated somewhere else, well, let's keep the lessons learned and disseminate that information and provide a system in replicating. So I believe this is, I don't know if it answers your questions, but basically we're now you weren't aware, and we hope that many other people that were not aware will be aware. Thank you.
Sylvia?
Do I have a second question for you? I'm Sylvia from Bolivia, Netherlands. Bolivia organization is working with development projects. My question is a little bit following the question of Sandra. If there is, I know that you cannot have the plans yourselves, you just facilitate, give facilitation to different migrants to realize their plans, but is there also a kind of advisory committee or a committee, I don't know, somebody who can help, if some organizations who really want to implement their project, which means the people who can, just write the good propositions in a good way?
Well, I think that's a very good question for the simple institutions that have their type of projects. And if you don't even use the same language, well, it looks like it's not going to work. And many hometown associations have a difficulty with that, is speaking the right language, having the same chain of thought in presenting a business proposal. Let's call it business proposal just to give that flavor that even development institutions do not have. Because a project for a development institution is not the same that you're going to provide to a commercial bank when you're asking them to finance your proposal. So this is a nice aspect also to have in mind. But there is a language barrier. That is true. In many cases, hometown associations do not understand the requirements of the development institutions. There's other ways, but to speak about what I know, being in one, And in many cases, development institutions do not understand or do not speak the language of hometown associations. At the end of the day, both do their projects and they work, so let's not accuse each other by saying you don't know how to do it. There's a communication failure, that is for sure. In this program, I personally, we're trying to understand some requirements, for instance, that are needed for a specific project that sometimes hometown associations do not understand. We can ask the question, are they relevant for this type of projects? Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, I agree. So sometimes the hometown association is not really right. When we ask a counterpart or audited accounts, for instance, this is just to ask you, are you sustainable? Because we're going to make an example out of you if it works. So it's not just to help you in this case. So since we want to make an example, let's make sure that financially or basically your institution is sustainable, and we're not going to have that type of issue. So and this is, since in many cases it's technical assistance and in his grants, you can understand maybe from the donor's perspective why these requirements exist. Again, sometimes they're not, it doesn't really make sense. From the hometown association, there's also some issues, and again, this is a logic that is not understood. Sometimes they're right or wrong, but there's a need to do everything by themselves. Just give us the money or an idea to get more money. So again, they're both sides. Both sides have their caprice, as they say, and at the end of the day, basically, yes, it's a language barrier. So we're trying to improve that, recognize our issues on that. I'm speaking with IFA, but I think in many cases we're speaking also for other development institutions, and trying to understand that language barrier.
Celia, when you speak on the microphone.
Oh yes, and actually I wanted to say one point, because to provide a solution, not to state the obvious, yes, we don't know how to communicate, so too bad. What we want to do, for instance, is, and this call for proposals is a very example, but it could be applied where many other institutions do, and many other programs, European Union, actually even here in the Netherlands, is how can you help, therefore, a hometown association that has the willingness, all that it takes, maybe not just the capacity to present a project in a language understandable by a development institution. Well, can you have an intermediary? Could you have somebody helping? And the same thing, the same concept idea that these projects are trying to promote in creating a sustainable project back home should be, maybe in the elaboration of this project itself, could also be applied. We are talking, for instance, with the IOM, that actually could serve as a help desk, let's call it, for migrant organizations in how to prepare these proposals or on what to look when they're creating a business plan. Think tanks for the programs I was saying in El Salvador, the idea came to actually create business opportunities, came from a think tank where they can analyze the business opportunities in a specific region, but also help them prepare a business plan, a sustainability plan, and see if the idea would fly. Basically, that's the whole point. So for projects to gather development institutions finance is the same thing. Is how can hometown associations can be helped in access, not only implementing the projects, but also access finance and technical assistance.
Are there more questions?
Well, just on this issue of, you see, it's not just to apply for the funds and get somebody to support you. Every year they want a report. So it's also, you know, there's a language issue, and I think that needs to be bridged. But we also have to look at very carefully, you know, what if you want to go down this road. I mean, if you need somebody to help you to fill the application, I don't see why and how you're going to manage it afterwards, because the reporting is even more burdensome than the application process usually. So it has to be thought through, I think, in terms of not just the proposal, but also the whole process, because the whole thing is quite, you know, challenging in that regard.
Anyone who would like to ask? Vincent?
Yep.